Hey, Uplifters, welcome back. I'm Aranza Savas, and I've spent 20 years at the intersection of behavior change research and coaching, helping midlife women do big, brave things. Today's episode is extra special because you're going to hear from two women in a single conversation back to back because they're telling a similar story from two different angles. And I think together, they make something more powerful than either story could share alone. So, one of the things I keep seeing in my coaching work is that a lot of us are driving through our lives with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. And we feel the pull towards something bigger. We know what we want, and we also know exactly how to talk ourselves out of it. The timing isn't right. The conditions aren't perfect. What are people going to think about me? Who do I think I am? And then something happens, some sort of catalyst that makes the brakes feel completely beside the point. The research on this is fascinating. Studies on what psychologists call mortality salience, meaning an acute awareness of our own death, consistently show that it actually doesn't make people step back and retreat. It makes them bolder, more willing to act on what really matters, more able to release the fear of judgment that was never really protecting them anyway. And the effect is particularly pronounced in midlife women who are already in the middle of a total neurological rewiring that increases our risk tolerance and our understanding of ourselves. Both of my guests understand this deeply. First, you're going to hear from Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson. She is the founder and CEO of the Heartwood Leadership Institute. She's one of JP Morgan Chase's 100 Women to Know in America and the award-winning author of 14 books. She's a global speaker and executive coach who has worked with everyone from Olympians to Fortune 100 CEOs. Jackie went through breast cancer treatment back in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic and came out the other side asking herself a question that changed everything. What's mine to do? Next, you're going to hear from Christy Kercheville. She's spent over 25 years as a CEO coach and a master facilitator working with Fortune 100 companies. 6 years ago, she was diagnosed with leiomyosarcoma, a rare and incurable cancer, in the very first weeks of COVID. She's been navigating that diagnosis ever since with more joy and more purpose than most people bring to a life without the disruption of cancer. So what you're going to hear in the next hour is two women who faced mortality and let it take its foot off the brake. What they did with that is the whole story today. Let's start with Jackie. So one of my favorite things that you share that you did recently is you talked about having 1,000 cups of coffee with total strangers.
Yes.
So what was that? What is that? I know it's still going on.
It is still going on. It could take me 25 years to do this. I don't know. But it started because there was a moment in a grocery store and I had no hair and I had no eyelashes and I had no eyebrows and all the telltale signs of going through cancer. And this guy coughed on me. And in that moment, I was so angry and I hated him. And I am not somebody who hates people. And I've had moments of hatred toward other people many times since. And so I knew I had to do something about that. So that was kind of the original impetus. And then the secondary impetus was I was really lost. So I had breast cancer treatment in 2020, was going through that during the pandemic. And I came out on the other side healthy, which I'm so grateful for. And part of that journey was really thinking, all right, if this is it, I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing things that don't mean anything to me. And it wasn't this big, like, I have to find my purpose. Because sometimes that, to me, that didn't resonate. Like, it was just too fluffy and amorphous. And so I had to think about it, like, what gives my life meaning? What do I care about? What are the things that really make me feel strongly in the world? What gives me joy? And so I started asking myself this question back then, which was, what's mine to do? And I've been asking myself that question really every day since. What is mine to do? And so those two things were happening at the same time. I decided that to overcome my crisis of faith in humanity, which is what it felt like, that I needed to fall in love with humans again. And so I started having cups of coffee with total strangers. And I found myself receiving all of these unexpected things from that journey because I met the most fascinating people. who believed very different things from me, who believed the same thing as me, who believed a variation of what I believed. And I fell in love with just their humanness and their humanity. And then I reached out to Monique Ruffbell, who is the Chief Program and Strategy Officer at TED. And I was designing conferences. She's designing conferences. And I said, would you have a cup of coffee with me? And I didn't know if she would say yes or not. I really wanted her to say yes. I didn't know if she would. She did. And we had a cup of coffee. And we just fell in love and hit it off. And, both really believe in and creating hope in the world and connection among people and creating big events. And so I said, I sketched this idea in my journal a couple of days ago. Can I just show this to you? And I showed her, literally held up my journal. And I was like, okay, I have this idea for a conference called the Gateway Gathering and Pitch Fest. And it's for people who want to expand their influence and impact in the world and figure out how to build a thought leadership platform. And I want people to have some education and inspiration. And then I want to have them get up and pitch, like people like you who oversee all of the global conferences and TEDx's at TED. And she goes, well, you have to do that. And I will be on your advisory council. And when Monique Ruffbell tells you to do something, you do it. And we had the pilot 5 months later. And we're having the second one in October of 2026. And my life has totally changed.
Wow. So the first word of wisdom I think that we can take from this as we think about how we might apply this process to our own journeys is, if you're thinking about this, if you have an idea that's like sparking for you, share it with other people without delay.
Yes.
That you trust and admire the opinions of.
Exactly. It can't be just anybody. And I think it also has to be at the right moment in your creative journey, because if you're too early in the idea and you don't you are swayed too much by other people's opinion, it can kind of dilute what your ideas are. But for me in that moment, I've been doing this a long time, and I had an instinct in myself. Like I checked in with myself first and said, is this time to share this? And I was like, oh yeah, this is a full body yes. There are other times where if I'm working on a book or, something, a bigger project, I'm like, this is not the moment to share. I'm still working out what this is. But in that moment, I was like, oh no, this is the person, this is the time.
Wow. And so you say that everything has changed since then. What do you mean by that?
I have had one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes my whole career.
Stop there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That full stop, that is where, I don't know, let's make up a percentage. What would be your guess from all the people you've worked with? How many people do you think are on one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes their entire
90?
life and career?
90?
Yeah. I was setting at 90. Yep.
Yeah. And it's this dance between, I feel this call. I feel that there's this message I have to share. I have this thing that's you can just feel it rising in you. And then and then you just start to extend yourself and you do the thing and you write the book or you get on the stage and then it's like, oh my gosh. And you put your foot on the brakes because being visible is scary. And sometimes the pushback is scary. And sometimes it comes from outside of us and sometimes it comes from inside of us. Like, who do you think you are? Being visible is dangerous. What are the people at my job going to think? What are the people in my family going to think? Like, all that stuff around belonging and who do I think, all that stuff starts playing and sabotaging in very sophisticated ways.
So what is different now? I am assuming you're telling us here that you put both feet on the gas, or at least, I don't know, I don't drive very often apparently. You at least took the foot off the brakes. It's probably more dangerous to put both feet on the gas.
But I get it. I get you where you're going. Yeah. What happened? There's a couple things that happened. I mean, the first is that I had breast cancer, and that, was a moment where then I started getting on stages and I would wear this bracelet. I'd still wear, every time I get on a stage, I wear this bracelet that reminds me of my cancer journey. And I look down at that thing, when I'm backstage and I am hyperventilating and I'm getting super nervous. And I look down at that and I put my hand and I hold the bracelet and I go, this is not as scary as cancer.
That's going in my book, by the way. I'm glad you signed a release.
It's not, seriously.
It's so good.
Right? it's putting life into perspective.
This is not as scary as cancer. No. Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson.
Yeah. And, no, not everybody's been through the cancer journey, but there's something that you're afraid of. There's something you've overcome.
Divorce.
Yes.
loss of a loved one,
Yes. Being
you name it,
fired,
being fired,
yeah, exactly.
especially by midlife.
Yes.
You can
Yes.
write a list.
Write an entire list of all the
Yep.
things.
This is not as scary as.
It's not as scary
So
as.
good.
Yeah. I think the other thing that happened was I was working with a coach and she asked me this question and she said, Jackie, what's in your house? And so I was like, what's in my house? And I started really thinking about, okay, in 5th grade in elementary school, I looked around and we did not have a school newspaper. And I thought that was ridiculous. And so I went with a friend of mine to our librarian and said, will you sponsor this thing if we start a newspaper? And she said yes. And so, I went to my friends. I said, will you write that? And will you interview that person? And will you do the cartoons? And so I suddenly realized, okay, I was building platforms for other people's voices and my own when I was in 5th grade. I was an entrepreneur in 5th grade. And then I was the general manager of my radio station in college. And I had my own scary story radio show. And I had a, music show. And I was also helping other people launch their shows. And then I was an editor-in-chief of magazines as a young professional. And then I started designing big national conferences for Fortune 50 companies. And so I was like, story has been my true love my entire life. And the moment I realized its power was when I was like even younger than that. And I would tell my brothers really scary stories at night to scare them. And there was one story one of my brothers came to me later and he said, that one story you told about the Jolly Green Giant coming to step on me in the middle of the night if I went to sleep? And I said, yeah, I do remember that. And he said, I was up all night crying, waiting for the Jolly Green Giant to come and step on me. So, I realized that A, story's been my true love, and B, it's so powerful. The stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell about other people, about the world, story is what drives human beings. So then I started thinking about if I had a mission statement, what would it be? And I'd had an experience where I was coaching an executive to get up on a stage in front of 1,000 people. And she wanted to tell this very personal story that had an impact on her career. And it was a room full of executives. And so I was coaching her on her story architecture, coaching her on her delivery, her presence, and all of that. And I was standing backstage when she got up to tell the story. So she gets up to tell this story. There was not a dry eye in the house. And when she came off that stage, she threw herself in my arms and she said, Jackie, you have no idea what that meant to me. Just sobbing. And what I said to her was, no, you have no idea what that meant to all those people in the audience that had to hear that message and the ripple effect of that. And when I started thinking about just how powerful story is in our world, I thought, that's what I have to do the rest of my life, is to activate the voice of soul in the world. She showed up there on that stage with her soul. That's mine to do. I think the most revolutionary thing I've done in my career recently, because, of course, I was so driven by fulfilling this need to feel like I've achieved something, to feel value. Certainly that was driving me in my early career. Now I think it's much more about where does my energy light up the absolute most so that I am fully in alignment with everything I am and who I was put here to be and having fun. I find that those are the places, if only I had known to do that earlier, to just be fully who I am and aligned and joyful. My gosh. So that also changed everything. So I am having more fun than I've ever had in my entire career. It's just a blast.
So looking back then, and this is, I think, such a beautiful point you've brought up of sort of inviting the question of how do we know when our foot is on the brake?
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is I'm not doing what feels energizing. I don't feel lit up. But what are some other signals you can see in retrospect? Because you were doing important, meaningful, creative, inspiring work pre-cancer. You wrote Dear Body Love Me pre-cancer.
Yeah. I think that it's experimentation, and I think that every project I've worked on has been, a step that I had to take to get here.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the end point either.
Yes. I have a metaphor for that too. I'll tell you in a second.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not done, right? So that's how I think about all of this is I follow my curiosity, and now I'm getting better at, if this is not feeling right, not doing that, but it's just a giant experiment. And so that is very tolerable to some people and not tolerable to other people.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, we were all really, really curious when we were kids. And so to really put that curious hat back on and just play, like, does this work for me? Do I like it? Does it feel good? Does it feel good enough to experiment and do more of? Or is this something that I don't even want to try because I'm scared I'm going to look like an idiot? I don't know. It's that self-awareness, but curiosity is an experimentation. Those are the two things I think.
So it was like, okay, have an idea, shape the idea a little bit, experiment with what happens when you tell somebody about the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm more energized. Then try out a small version of it. Oh, I feel more energized. I want to do more, even though it's scary. Try a slightly bigger version of it, and then keep growing the amount of pressure you put on the gas and take off of the brake. So it's not an automatic necessarily. I took my foot off the brake and pressed down hard on the gas.
No, I don't think so. I think it's still like, it's a little, you always hear this, like the gurus, the people who get really good, at whatever it is that they do, that they still have all the same things, but they just come back faster. Like they come back to themselves faster.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's how I think about this, because there are certainly still days where I'm like, I want to jam my foot on that brake so hard. And then I just know how to come back faster. And I know how to take care of myself and the parts of me that are afraid, and I know how to work through that now.
How do you do that?
My way into that, I learned from my amazing therapist, Lori Schwartz of the Healing House of St. Paul.
Shout out to Lori.
She's so good. She's so good. And she really taught me, how to be compassionate with myself. And she taught me how to trust me. So that I wasn't throwing myself under the bus to people please, to go, become a chameleon with this project to serve everyone. And she really taught me how to hear my own voice as a creative and as a human. And so that has also made the difference, is that I've done that work. And so just this week, I am preparing to launch my podcast, as you know, Ideas Love Community. And I've been writing the introduction, like the intro episode, over and over and over again. And I keep asking myself, what are you afraid to say? And then I say, okay, honey. Okay. All right. Yep. This is really scary. What is it about it that's scary to you? Let's talk. And I just treat myself with the same care and compassion that I would treat my daughter. And I will literally put my hands on my chest and be like, all right, honey, I got you. I got you. And Lori taught me how to do that.
I now end my morning pages every day with one of two different alignments with my grandma. I either say, okay, grandma, let's go do big, brave things, which is sort of my signal to myself that, like, I'm not doing the scary stuff alone. I've got grandma beside me and we're going to do it together. Or I end it with sort of channeling her voice to me, this loving, gentle, supportive voice that says, I love you, Aransas. I believe in you. You have so much proof that you can do big, brave things. I've got you. Let's go. And it's been really, really just meaningful, but also really powerfully activating. Because I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. I've got generations of women with me, behind me, beside me, in front of me, paving the way. And we can do this. Let's go. Nothing I'm scared of is that big a freaking deal anyway. Just a little embarrassing sometimes.
I love that. I love your grandma. She was such a force of nature. Oh my gosh. And just your stories about her have inspired so many people to be brave. And I love that you're calling her in when you need her. That's beautiful.
Thank you. It's pretty great. So I was going to say before about this idea of, like, this isn't the destination. So this is something, of course, I've literally talked to every single client of mine about this week. This single concept has come up because everyone I'm working with is in transition.
Yes.
And has come so far. Like, their little girl self will be like, dang. And so, like, again, I've never climbed Mount Everest. Caveat, I don't know how many base camps there are. I don't know what names they have, but I see them as this place where we, like, acclimate and change and learn how to breathe at a new altitude, because I'm pretty sure that's what happens based on the books I've read. And I think about like our little girl selves would be like, oh my gosh, I can't see beyond base camp 3. That's as far up the mountain as I can see from the bottom. If we saw ourselves getting to base camp 3, we'd be like, whoa, you're at the top. And then once you're at base camp 3, you're like, I think I can see 6.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's how it happens.
And then for somebody else who's at base camp 3, once they see you up at 6, they're like, oh my gosh, there's a base camp 6. I'm going to like get my strength together. I'm going to do the reps and I'm going to go to base camp 6.
Yeah, because my friend made it to 6, and if she can do it, so can I.
Correct.
That's so interesting. You know, I think that's the other thing that happened recently is that I watch my friends just out there doing amazing work like you, who are just out there doing it. And it's so inspiring. And it's also like, well, like I remember when I pitched my literary agent, my very first book, and I was at a conference for writers, and I found out because she got up on stage and was speaking first before they did this kind of speed dating thing or whatever, but I hadn't signed up for the speed dating part. And so she was up on the stage, and in the interview, I found out she went to the same college that I went to. And all of a sudden she was human to me. And so when she was finished speaking, I got in that line and I stood in line, and then I just, went up there shaking, red cheeks, the whole thing, and just pitched her my idea. And, and then she's like, I like it. Here's my card. And so I think about that a lot, like just who you're surrounded by. I mean, this is such a cliche, but it's so true. Like you see people suddenly able to hit base camp 6, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a person just like me.
Yeah.
I can
Who used to be at base camp 3.
Yeah. And it turns out that's how we all are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that is another key takeaway from this episode, friends, for anyone listening and keeping score here is like, let's think about who the people are that we really admire, that we both want to look to, but also talk to. And I literally have on my vision board this year 3 women I want to talk to. I'm just going to say them right now. I want to talk to Suleika Jawad. I want to talk to Jane Pauley. And I actually have in my like vision of my life, I'm going to interview her this year. She's going to interview me next year. And I want to talk to Lisa Congdon. And I want her to ultimately do the artwork for the cover of my book.
Game on.
Game on. Like, this is what my friend Kara and I like to call precision manifesting.
That.
Because if we don't know really what it is we want, if we don't really like acknowledge what it is we really want, like it's going to end up all mushy and uncertain. And like, you're not going to put your foot on the gas if you're like going somewhere where you have no idea where the road goes.
No. And on the way to get there, you're going to learn so many interesting things, and you're going to meet so many interesting people. Yeah, this is huge. I mean, I love that. When I reached out to Monique, I was like, okay, this is a stretch, for me. It felt like.
Yeah.
And when, it was so funny. I had a call with her a couple of days ago, and she's like, okay, when's the second one? And so we did that. And she goes, this does have to be in person at some point. I think that sometimes, like when you are reaching out to those folks that you feel like are at base camp 6, they help you just see possibilities for yourself. And they say things like that, like, this conference could get really big and you could do this in person. And it's like, oh. And it helps with the precision, right? The dreaming, because then it's like, I hadn't even known to think like that for myself. And I love that when you start surrounding yourself with people who are out there doing things that you admire, suddenly something crosses your radar that you never would have thought of yourself.
Because you couldn't see it from where you were.
You could not see it. Yeah. You couldn't see it.
Yeah. And I think we underestimate the value of overcoming our awkwardness and our fear about reaching out to these people. One of the other things I do every day is I write down a list of all the things I'm scared of doing that day.
I love that.
And then I challenge them.
So good.
And I say, like, what do I think is going to happen?
So good.
And then I say, well, what could make this easier? Or how do I prepare myself for this?
So good.
And then ultimately I ask myself if it's worth it. And the answer is always yes, really annoyingly. But I think those questions really like speak to our inherent fear of like, I'm going to ask Monique. She's going to say no or ignore me.
Mm-hmm.
Great. A, you still asked. B, she knows your name now. C, look back at what you asked her. Could it have been more specific?
Mm-hmm.
Could it have been clearer so that next time you reach out to Monique after like showing her that you're a person and that you genuinely are interested in her, she's more likely to say yes.
Yeah. And D, it's not as scary as cancer.
Honestly.
No, it's just not. It really isn't. It's just people are people.
Yeah.
We're people. So yeah, I think about the courage that it takes to just reach out, right? And to do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it takes like the more you practice doing things that are make you nervous, the easier it gets. And it's still terrifying sometimes. I at the Gateway Gathering and Pitch Fest that just happened 2 weeks ago, the very first one, the pilot, it was so fun. And I had Samantha McKenna come. She goes by Sam. She's on LinkedIn. If you haven't seen her, check her stuff out. And so she does a lot of sales training. And she launched her, she was an executive at LinkedIn, and she ended up launching her own business, went from like 0 to 8 figures in like no time. And so I just asked her, I was like, do you still get afraid of, stuff and doing things? And were you afraid when you launched your business? And she was like, oh my gosh, I was terrified. And it's like, there's this myth that it's like, angels singing and it's just this really easy. No, like we're scared all along the way. Like I was scared yesterday because of something I want to do. Like we're all scared. It's just, I don't know. You take that step anyway. And then you prove to yourself, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost a desensitization.
Yeah.
And our thresholds increase with practice.
Well, and I think that, this is for folks at middle age. And I think that the fear and the self-sabotage comes in a different way at this age. I think at this age, it is, well, I've built this reputation.
That's right.
I have built this reputation.
What will they think of me?
Exactly. And what if so-and-so sees this? And what if and will they think of me differently? And what if I'm outside of the lane that I was in? And blah,
Who
blah,
are
blah,
they
blah,
anyway?
Blah, blah, blah. Yes, exactly. So I don't know. I think sometimes they call it the curse of knowledge, right? Where you just have, too much. And so that it's hard for you to kind of go back to being a beginner. And I think that curiosity thing is what turns it back on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And action.
Yeah. I mean,
doing things,
right?
experimenting, learning, being messy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so refreshing too, I think, to hear people that we admire, to hear the people that we see doing big, brave things, acknowledging their fears and doing it anyway. And to me, that's a big part of why this show exists, is so that we can all hear each other say like, are you kidding? I'm scared all the time. And then I do these tiny things and I'm a little less scared sometimes. And then I'm more scared other times. And I call my really smart friend and she's like, you got this. Get it together, Jack. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's do this. Exactly.
Well, friends, that was a hearty dose of perspective. Thank you, Jackie, for reminding us that whatever it is we're doing right now, it's probably not quite as hard as cancer. Our next guest is still right in the middle of her cancer journey. Christy Kercheville has built a life that fits the moment she's in. As challenging as it has been to battle a rare cancer, she's determined to find the beauty in it. She doesn't pretend it's easy. She doesn't pretend it's fun. She gives herself time and space to wallow. And then she asks herself, what's next? How do I create more love? How do I create more joy? How do I create more meaning and purpose out of this moment that I'm in right now? The world can feel like a lot these days. And so I hope Christy's story reminds us all that whatever we're facing, maybe there's a way through that creates a little more light.
There are good days and bad days, although the good days outweigh the bad ones.
And I know this has been a long journey at this point. It's probably in some ways felt like it's gone by in a blink of an eye, and in other ways like it's been going on forever. So take us back to the moment that changed everything for you.
Yes. Well, I remember I was having massive pain and I thought I was having an appendicitis. And we have a good friend that's an ER doc, and we called him, and my husband's got the anatomy book out. It seems like these things always happen on a weekend when, you have to go to the ER. And I thought, well, let me just go in and see what's happening. And they ended up going in and they said, it's not your appendix, but we're not really sure what it is. And then they said, we think it's a burst ovary. And so going in through the surgery, they found a 5 centimeter tumor in my abdominal cavity that was pressing on my psoas muscle, which was really causing that extreme pain. And I hadn't felt good for a couple of weeks prior to that, just feeling kind of low energy. But I feel like sometimes we all go through that if the weather's gray or just depending on what's happening. So you tend to put those things off. But I thought, I need to go in because I'm feeling the pain, thank goodness. And I never forget, this was March 5th of 2020 at the very beginning of COVID. And they had to call in a vascular surgeon because it was also near a major artery. And I remember him calling me 4 days later, and he was even avoiding the word cancer. And he was like, well, you have leiomyosarcoma and don't Google it. And I was like, well, is that cancer? And he's like, yes, again, but don't read everything you believe on, don't read everything on the internet about it. And I just thought, oh, okay, what do? Of course, you get on the internet.
Of course.
And the general prognosis for leiomyosarcoma, especially depending on the stage it's in at the time, is about 5 years. So that can freak anyone out. I just decided, well, I've always been goal-oriented and I also do my own research. And I just discovered that, wow, mine was caught really early. Once I had the surgery, which was also just a feat in itself, I had to line up 4 different surgeons on the same day for this procedure because it was impacting the kidney, and it basically goes in your soft tissue, so it can get really close to organs. So never heard of it, yet I know a lot about it now. And just that miracle happened, I think, because of COVID and because things were free and it was only medical necessary. But I had to get all these appointments in and I just made it happen. I chose to be anxious shortly, but then I went right into action. And so that's really my first thing that I've learned is action over anxiety, get moving. And even if you're feeling overwhelmed, just to say, what's important right now in the moment? What can I do today? Even if it's just one thing. So I just had to make phone calls, get appointments, beg. I would say, do you know what I have? Because this is really urgent that I get this tumor out. Otherwise it can spread. And we really don't want that. And so I made it happen. Unfortunately, at the very last minute, one of my oncology surgeons got a COVID and was incubated. And he called me when he was getting sick and he said, I'm not going to be able to do your surgery. This was someone who first diagnosed me who I'd come to be close with. And all of a sudden I have someone else and stepping in that I had not met until the morning of the surgery because it happened so quickly. So again, just getting over that anxiety and postponing those what ifs. Of course, we're human. We do that. Like, oh, what if this happens? What if this person isn't as qualified as my doctor? I've already studied and researched him. You can do the what ifs all day long, and that really doesn't help you take any action. And so I think even just putting a goal for me, if I say I'm going to have a little bit of anxious and a little woe me victim moment, that's fine. But how long am I going to let that last? So I just say, I'm going to stew and wallow and complain and whine for 4 hours or a full day, whatever I need. Sometimes it takes a weekend for some of us based on the situation. But then I'm going to move into action and I've got to take and make these steps. And then when I'm feeling overwhelmed, as the steps are taking a long time, you experience frustrations along the way, just saying what's important right now. What's the next thing to do? What's the next phone call?
That's so good and so relevant to really everything in life, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. And that's why I love helping and coaching people, because people get overwhelmed by different things. I remember I used to get overwhelmed if I had a lot going on and then all of a sudden I had like a car repair or other things on top of your normal that just like can spin you like, I can't believe I got to deal with this and now this. And they're just mundane things sometimes. And yet the same lesson applies.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I get to be upset about this. I get to feel frustrated with this disruption and this disappointment. And then what am I going to do with this energy?
Exactly. Cry, scream, whatever you can, but then realize that's just the time needed to process, but yet it's not really moving you forward. It's just dealing with that in the moment.
It's step 1. And so it needs honoring.
Yes.
And then what's step 2?
Yes. And if I don't put a goal, if I don't say, okay, I've got 2 days for this one, because this was a real, hard one. There's only been a couple of times where I gave myself a full weekend, but I think it's just more about for a couple hours, I'm just going to whine. I'm going to call a couple of friends and whine, which I always just try not to do because that takes emotional energy as well.
Yeah. Yeah. To put that on someone else.
Yes, for sure.
I bet they love doing it for you because I bet
they
you do. It
do.
for them
I've got
too.
my rotation of people that I can call. It's like, okay, who didn't I call last time that I can? And then I've got my leiomyosarcoma support group, which has been amazing. I've learned so much. I remember I thinking at first, I don't need this support group for cancer. And my husband was like, well, I think it might be good for you. And so once I did, then I was on him finding a support group. And so we found something for him to participate in as a caregiver during some of those difficult days.
What a great reminder for all of us. And I'm writing a book right now on midlife courage. And one of the chapters is really about creating those support networks. And I think whatever we are managing in life, there is so much research to show that we can manage more easily if we don't believe that we have to manage alone.
Yes, I love that. Midlife courage. We definitely all need that.
We really do. I mean, and in so many different domains, right? Personally, professionally, politically, physically.
Yes, the list goes on.
The list goes on. One of the things I talk a lot about in the book is reorienting our KPIs in times of big change. And so I'm curious for you, if we go back to you 5 years ago, how would you have measured success? And how has that shifted now over the last 5 years?
Because I teach work-life balance, I always feel like that's important to have that and to be able to achieve your work goals and be able to spend time with family and also travel. I live to travel. If I don't have a trip planned, I go stir crazy. And that's one of the things that helps me get through the hard days too. It's like, well, but I've got this, and this to look forward to. So I've got to get in shape and do what I need to do now so that I can do that in the future. And I think what looks different for me is I used to travel the world. I love what I do, coaching and facilitating workshops. It doesn't really feel like work. And I'm helping people. I'm making a difference for people. And I love that. I've had to change just the way I look at that and saying some people have gone back to in person, but that doesn't always work for me because I do have a lot of ongoing appointments with the cancer I have. I find that I can't travel as much for work and really just said part-time work is okay. Also, it's important to me to give back. So I've been part of a women's coaching network for over 10 years. So I've always supported that group and volunteering. Now with cancer, just became a certified Emmerman's Angel to support people that are on the same path with this type of sarcoma cancer. And so I think volunteering is more important to me now than it was, and also just spending quality time with my children. We just took a family road trip. My sons are 22 and 24. And we rented a van and we drove all over the place. And that was just really important to me. I'm getting to a point where wanting to share my journey more, not privately, but a little bit more publicly. So I've been watching and scrolling TikTok lately, which I didn't even have the app. But I did know that a few cancer warriors that had a similar type of cancer to me were posting regularly and have both passed away. And I thought, well, who else is going to continue this message? And how can I get my story out? Because it's not only about the cancer, but it's really just about being true to yourself and living life in the present, which is really hard for a lot of people. When I lost my hair, it's like, you know what? I had the most thickest, beautiful hair that got compliments all the time. And I had that for like 54 years until I lost it. It was actually, I didn't lose my hair I didn't have to do chemo for 2 years into the journey. So I had the surgery and then I was great. I was just living life and doing as much as I could, getting lots off the bucket list. And then right before the 2-year mark, it came back. But when I lost my hair, I thought, it's okay. I'll just get a wig or maybe not. And I had great hair, and many people can't say that they love their hair for 50 something years. The same thing with the weight gain. I would reframe and say, you know what? I'd rather look 30 pounds heavier. I gained so much weight just from the chemo and the steroids that just hasn't gone away. I'd rather be like that and be happy and strong, still keep my workouts in, than look really sickly and people that can't gain the weight. And so I just think that whatever situation you're in, your perspective and how you reframe the situation is so important. And it takes work, daily work. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, distinguish that for us from what's been called toxic positivity
Mm,
and sort of dishonoring our feelings. How is that different
yes.
for you to feel a real sense of joy in what is?
Yes. I think for me, it goes to what I do just for that inner confidence and doing the work regularly. And it goes back to there's days that I cry that I'm down. It's like, oh God, why do I have to wear a wig? Or why is my hair turning white now? It's the woe is me. And I think we have to allow ourselves that time. And I think that toxic positivity is also not projecting that on others, saying, well, you should do this, Aransas. Well, you
You
sound
feel
really
so
negative.
good.
Why don't you reframe and so it's like that doesn't work. You have to meet people where they are. But I think for me, just knowing that, and this works with anyone that I'm coaching on any skill, people think there's a magic pill to just be, there isn't, it's daily work. For me, it's reframing my thoughts every day when I hear that noise or maybe I just want to embrace that victim and feel like a downer that day. And that's okay, as long as I don't get stuck there. And then really not projecting that on other people. And I think I've experienced a lot of that too, just, with the cancer diagnosis, people are always advising you what to do. And, oh, have you done this? Or this really works. Or, even my sister used to be the worst at it. Do this, do that. You need to try. It's like, it's a lot of noise. And I do my own research. And I know they're coming from a place of just helpfulness and support. It's not really meeting you where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the difference, is someone that says they're because I would consider myself an optimist, but I'm also human, like we all are. So you can't be positive 100% of the time. You can reframe and do the work, and it may take a few days here and there, and daily doing that, I think, is important.
I think that's exactly it. I think also it goes back to what you were saying before about honoring those
Yes.
fears and those worries and letting them have their moment and then putting yourself in a position of leadership and choosing what you want to do with it.
Yes, I love that word. And that's the choice is really ours. We can choose to be sad, and that sometimes we need that.
Yeah.
I had a crying fest. My neighbor's daughter has been going through some stuff, and she was like, I've been crying all day. And I'm like, me too. It's just finding those right people. I've got neighbors that would bring dinner. People want to do the food chains, which is great when you're having a surgery and you've got your family to feed. There were some days my mouth was on fire from a side effect. And so I would just tell my neighbor, hey, can you bring by a smoothie? And so I feel like I've gotten better. And that's something I've learned over time, because a lot of people, it's hard for them to ask for help. And I was included in that. And now I do when I really need it, when I really want something.
In our family, we talk a lot about the helped, hugged, heard framework. That sometimes we want to be helped. We want all that advice and insight and ideas. And sometimes we just want to be petted and hugged and cuddled. And sometimes, and this is me most of the time, as my family knows, I want neither of those things at all. I just want to be heard. I just want you to say, yeah, that sounds rough.
Yes.
Ugh, that sucks.
Yes, that empathy. We just want that. I know.
What's one of the most fun or surprising things you've done on your bucket list?
One thing that I would say really had the most impact is I recently, during chemo, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go, but I really wanted to take this trip to Europe. I've hosted 2 foreign exchange students, one from Germany and one from Sweden. I'm very close to both of them. And one of the things on my list was for them to meet. And I had this trip where we were going. I had been to both of their homes before, but they had never met. And they ended up both coming to meet, and we saw the tulips in Amsterdam. So on that trip alone, I accomplished getting to several new countries, having my students meet. And that happened by chance. I was visualizing, but my one student was like, yeah, I don't know if I can make it over there. And the last minute, he's like, I'm coming.
Oh.
And so it all worked out. In the meantime, I had some side effects from the long flight and traveling. And I had retained so much water that I only had one pair of shoes that fit, and I had to wear them on loose laces. But I walked around Europe. I did what I could, and I still lived life. I, couldn't do as much as I would normally do in Europe, but I was like, that's okay. It's time for a nap.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back out later. So I think just being able to plan those things and don't say, oh, I can't do this because I'm probably going to be in treatment, or I can't do this because of this reason. We always have those things that keep us from doing things.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really big lesson right there, Christy.
Yes. And live with no regrets. So I'm just living away. And if I died tomorrow, it's like, wow, I've done so many things, and look at all the places and all the people that I've helped.
Amazing. You're a wonder. I'm so glad we finally got to meet. Thank you again for taking time to hang out with us. For everybody listening, I hope you find in this inspiration to seize the moment, to live this life fully and boldly and bravely. We might as well just seize the freaking moment and drink every last drop of juice out of this life. And you're such an amazing example of that, Christy.
I think it was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for watching the Uplifters Podcast. If this inspired you, hit subscribe and tap the bell to stay uplifted. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs a little lift today. Big love.
Painted water sunshine with rosemary and thyme. Dwell in the perplexing, though you find it vexing. Toss a star and hover, be your own best lover. Relish in a new prime, plant a tree in springtime. Dance with idle hindsight, bring the sun to twilight.